Okay, guess what I'm pulling out of my freezer? Sourdough pizza dough. So here's the cool thing, you can freeze the dough. So I know some of you have said, I don't want to make that big of a batch of sourdough dough. Like when I show you how to make this big batch so that it's easy and you don't have to be slaving away all week on dough. Okay, you can freeze batches of your dough, and I'm going to show you how I use it to make pizza. So first, I'm going to show you how I use the frozen dough to make pizza today. I'm taking it out in the morning. I was just out in the garden and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't have any pizza dough made for dinner tonight, but I have some in the freezer. So I'm going to show you how I use this, and then stick around to the end of the video because I'll show you how to make the batch of dough as well. And you can then choose how much do you want to keep in your fridge to bake sometime this week? How much do you want to put in your freezer? But one day of mixing with your sourdough and dealing with all of the mixing for lots of days of fresh bread, and you don't have to be slaving in the kitchen all the time. So this is how we do it with frozen dough. So it's the morning, it is 9:30. I am just taking it out. I'm gonna set this bag on the counter. I want the moisture to stay in there, so I don't want that all to escape. And this is literally just gonna sit on the counter for hours as it thaws, and it's gonna wake back up because it's warm in the kitchen. This is the first step. Take it out of the freezer, put it on your counter. Frozen dough update. It is 1 o'clock and my dough is almost completely thawed out. It only takes a couple hours sitting out on the counter. And just so you know, this is about 600 grams of dough. That's what I popped into the freezer. So 600 grams of dough only takes a couple hours and it will be thawed out. So I'm gonna let it rest, I think until 3 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, I'm gonna pat it out into my pizza pan, cover it with the plastic wrap, and then it will get to rise and proof on that pan for several hours before we bake it. But right now, it's thawed. It's 4 o'clock and I'm patting the dough out so that it can rise in the pans for a couple hours before we bake. But before I put the dough into these pans, and I will put the link to these pans down in the description below. They're my favorite for when we are making pizza in our regular oven. And these are the same pans, like this little one I'm working with right now. This is the same one that I use when I make some of our rustic loaves. It has this really fun domed lid. You don't need the lids in order to make pizza, but I love the way that it makes the crust of the pizza really crunchy. And yes, I use butter in the pan to make sure that it doesn't stick. I like the way the butter tastes the best. You can use olive oil if you want, or whatever oil you prefer. I just like the butter because the pizza does not, well, the dough, I should say, does not slip around in it when I'm patting it out. Olive oil, it will slip around on and it bothers me. And so I really like that it kind of sticks to the butter in a good way. It keeps it stable when you're trying to pat the dough out. This was 600 grams of dough, which is enough to make 2 pizzas. And I would say the smaller, like kind of this pan that I'm working with first is, I'd say it's a smaller size. I need to look at the measurement. I'll put it below. The red pan is a medium-sized pizza. So when I cut it, I give a smaller chunk to the little blue pan, and then I do a little bit bigger chunk in the red pan, and it gives us 2 pizzas that I would say are on the thin side. If you want your dough to be thick, then I would use more like 400 grams of dough for a medium-sized pizza. But do you see how I'm easily patting the dough out? It's not sliding around in the pan. And as I go through, my goal is to get it so that I've created that crust, that rim around the corner, and then it also has that thinner part in the middle.
This is going to rest, and you'll see in a minute, we're going to slide it into the oven. It's going to rest in the oven for a couple of hours, so it has time to fluff up, and you will be able to see a difference after yours has been sitting for a couple hours, especially if it's been in a warm space, because you want it to look fluffy. So making pizza is a little bit different than if you were going to make a sandwich loaf or even a rustic loaf. You're going to see the difference because it's such a small, thin layer of dough. You want to see that it's starting to rise before you ever put any toppings on it. If it's not rising at all, it is going to get some rise in the oven, but if it's not rising at all, then I would say you would want to go all the way back to your starter and make sure that your starter was really active when you made your dough. And the reason why you want that starter really active is because an active starter is what gives you the fluffiest pizza dough or the fluffiest bread. So here we go. We're still working the dough around the pan. And you can make a choice. If you know you want to have your pizza dough in the freezer you only want to make one pizza at a time, then just save only 300 grams of dough in your freezer bags. Okay, here we are turning the oven light on. It's only the oven light is on, and I put a bowl of water in. When you put a bowl of water in the oven with your pizza pans and the dough, you don't need to cover the pans because you actually want them to rise and you want them to soak up the moisture from that bowl of water. And so we're going to top our pizzas today with fresh mozzarella cheese, and you can buy it in this size of a round. You can also get the bigger ones. Our family loves fresh mozzarella, and I just do some kind of thick slices of it. Fresh mozzarella is different than using pre-grated or even a block of mozzarella that you would grate. Fresh mozzarella acts different, and so don't throw it on your pizza right away. You'll see we're going to actually put it on the pizza towards the end of its baking. But right now, I want to just get all of the pizza toppings prepped, and fresh mozzarella is one of them. And then we're also going to do pesto. If you're not a fan of pesto, don't you worry. You can use like a pizza sauce, a marinara. You could even do a cream sauce if you like cream sauce. And then we're also going to add in some of our own sun-dried tomatoes. These tomatoes are ones that we harvested from our garden last summer. We actually dehydrated them on our dehydrator, and these were just cherry-sized tomatoes that we cut in half. And then what I like to do before I add them onto pizzas or into pastas or salads or anything is that I reconstitute them. So I boiled the tea kettle, and this is just boiling water. I poured the water over those dried tomatoes, and then you let them rest in the bowl while you're getting the rest of your stuff ready, and they get soft again. And then we also have some fresh basil from our garden. And when you choose or when you pick fresh basil, you want to just pinch off chunks of the leaves so that it encourages the plant to continue to bush out. So even if you bought basil at the store, pinch off a whole chunk of those leaves and the plant will keep sending up new leaves. Okay, this is our favorite way to make the crust so yummy is I actually melt a couple tablespoons of butter and I brush it on. And then this is coarse salt. I just go around the rim of the crust and I put some coarse salt where we brushed the butter. And what I've found is it's best to melt the butter and brush it on your crust because at this point we want to be really gentle with our pizza dough. We don't want to be squishing it because we want it to keep all of that fluff and all of that rise that it has gotten over the last couple hours. So even as I spread the pesto on, I'm being really gentle, not to push down on the dough. And that's why I like to melt the butter for the crust. You could just use softened butter and wipe it on your crust, but it needs to be really soft butter because you don't want to push down on your dough at this point. This is where it's different. Making pizza, or like if you're going to make focaccia even, It's different than when you shape a loaf for like a rustic loaf or a sandwich loaf where you're trying to create all that tension. Pizza dough is different. We want it to have time to rise, and then we do not want to push any of that rise out as we brush the butter on the crust, as we add the pesto. The goal is to allow the pizza dough to keep all of that fluff so that when it goes into the oven, it gets even more rise, which makes it even fluffier and soft. And the beautiful thing about using these Dutch ovens to do your pizza is your crust is going to be a little bit crunchy too. But don't worry, if you do not have a Dutch oven like this that you can use a regular pizza pan and do the exact same method. You could even use a pizza stone. And if you're going to do a pizza stone, what I would say is to pat your pizza dough out on a piece of parchment paper. And you're going to do this whole process with it on parchment paper on like a baking sheet. And then once your pizza stone is all warmed up and ready to go, you will just slide that parchment paper onto your pizza stone. Okay, so what you didn't see because I forgot to get a video is that I put our pizzas into the oven. Oh, somebody's taking some fresh mozzarella off the board. I swear, I have to guard it because otherwise they'll eat it before it ever makes it onto pizza. But bake your pizza with your sauce on it for about 10 to 12 minutes.
Oh, the dishwasher is.
Then we're gonna top with our fresh mozzarella and our chopped up sun-dried tomatoes. And you can see I strained the tomatoes. I took them out of that hot water because I don't want that water on the pizza, but I want these really soft tomatoes. And I like to just like roughly chop them up so that you get these little bites of flavor on the pizza instead of a whole tomato. Like a whole sun-dried tomato is just a little bit too much of that flavor. And if you have not dried your own tomatoes yet, when it comes to summertime, I'm going to show you how to do it because, oh my goodness, it's so easy and so flavorful. So see the pizza? It cooked for 10 minutes. The dough looks a bit fluffier, but it's still not browned. And this is when we do all of these little toppings. And maybe you're going to do olives or you're going to put some sausage on yours. Anything like that you can do. The reason why I do these pizzas a little bit different where I don't put all the toppings on in the beginning is simply because the mozzarella cheese and the sun-dried tomatoes cannot handle being in the oven for 25 minutes. They'll get scalded. So if you have toppings that are delicate, add them on halfway through baking instead of having them be on there the whole time getting just like completely fried in the oven. Regular shredded mozzarella cheese or pepperoni or sausage or black olives, peppers, all of that stuff, it can handle being in the oven the whole time. But these toppings in particular, they just can't handle it. And you'll see, I do not put that fresh basil on. Fresh basil doesn't go into the oven. Fresh basil is a garnish for the end, and so we'll add it on later. But now the pizzas are both going into the oven. They're gonna bake for 12 more minutes. And so they bake for a total of 20 to 25 minutes until they're completely finished. And I'll show you. Oh, they came out so good. Okay, these are looking pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is let it rest in the pan for just a little bit before we move it. But come here, Maddie, let's show them. So if you put the mozzarella on too early, then it will start to kind of like caramelize a bit like that, which isn't bad, but I think I put it on just a little bit too early. We like it when it's still kind of together like this, but still gonna be delicious. Okay, let's see. I think we can take this out now. So we'll slide it out onto the cutting board. And fresh basil, you don't want to put fresh basil on and put it into the oven because it will just like, it like fries it. It can't handle it. The basil can't handle it. So fresh basil, you don't want to put it into the oven. You want to just rip it. Oh. Okay, we just rip the fresh basil and drop it on there. And that gives it such good, oh, just that fresh flavor. You just cannot get that flavor unless you have that fresh basil. You can even, if you want to serve it whole like that, you could like put some whole pieces on there. But we're gonna slice this up and we're headed out to the orchard because the sun is out and we're gonna go eat dinner out there. And soon it will be pizza season in the orchard, and we'll bring you with us when we're out there doing that. Oh, here's the finished product. Look at how delicious it is. Oh, this one's still sizzling. You can see that I just took it out of the oven. And you can top your pizza with any toppings and sauce you want. But here's what I suggest. Get at least the sauce and whatever toppings can handle 25 minutes in the oven. Get them on the pizza before you ever put it in the oven because it will help your dough be the softest. And then go eat outside. There is something about eating outside. It makes the flavors better. It makes you just taste it all more. Sit at the table with family and friends, because this is why we love sharing all that we do in our own kitchen. We hope that it will inspire you to fill your table too. And if you don't know how to make this pizza dough yet, come with me. Let's go make the dough right now. The first thing that you're going to need in order to do sourdough is you really need to have a food scale. And I put a link to this down in the description below, along with all the measurements we're doing. And almost all sourdough recipes are going to be written in grams. And so when you turn your scale on, you just want to make sure that you click through the different units of measurement until it says a G for grams. The other thing is that I put my bowl on here before I turned the scale on. But let's say you didn't. You put it on there and it's measuring some weight. Just hit the tare button and that zeroes out your scale, which allows you to start fresh and you're not having to add any numbers together, which is great. All you have to do is think about the one thing you're putting in. So in order to make our pizza dough, I need 360 grams of starter. So I'm just gonna pour it in. And typically it takes this entire jar to get to 360 grams, which is why if you go back and watch our video on how to do your starter, it's why I make so much starter, because I know that I'm gonna use almost the entire jar. So for my pizza dough recipe, I use one whole jar if I'm making just 2 loaves of our bread. And so that's why I do such a big amount of sourdough starter. If you are in a smaller family and you're thinking, there is no way we would eat that much, you don't have to make this whole batch. You can split up the measurements and only do 2 pizza dough, 2 pizzas worth of dough, or 1 loaf of bread. But you'll see that there is still sourdough starter in my jar. And we'll talk about that in a minute. We're not gonna throw that out because that can get used. We're gonna put it back into the fridge and it's gonna get used for all sorts of goodness in the days to come. So I'm gonna tear my scale out and get some fresh water. So my scale is all zeroed out now. I tear my scale. And now I'm putting in 500 grams of pure water. And we are on an aquifer, so we use our water just straight from our tap because it's very clean. But if you're in the city or you feel like your water has a lot of like chlorine or other flavor to it, you can just get some bottles of water from the store to use when you're making this so that it doesn't take on any of that flavor. You can see I put in like 6 grams too much. Let's take it out. There we go, we're close. It's okay if you're over by just a couple grams. Don't worry about that. Now, even though I am going to use my KitchenAid stand mixer to like knead this, I use my Danish dough whisk to get the sourdough starter and water just a little bit incorporated before we put the flour in. Now here's the thing that you need to know about getting your dough ready is you want to get the starter, water, and flour incorporated together before you add the salt. The salt is not gonna go in until our bread is actually fairly mixed up. And I'll tell you about that in 1 minute. So let's tear out our scale. We're gonna zero it out, and now we need 1,000 grams of flour, and we like to use the organic unbleached flour. If you're wanting to do whole wheat or rye or anything like that, that will take a different measurement, and I would say do a little research online to see what, like how you want to adjust that, but it really truly is that you're probably just going to need a little bit less flour and maybe a little bit more water. But I use this unbleached organic flour, and so these are the measurements that work best for that type of flour. Now we're gonna take this over to our mixer and let the dough hook do the work. I'm gonna let the mixer do all of the work of trying to get the flour and water incorporated, plus it's gonna do the work for this stretch and fold as well when we get to that stage. This is a dough hook. That's what you're wanting to use. If you only have this, it will work, but the thing that I've noticed with the KitchenAid is that it's really easy to overwork the dough. And so if you're gonna use this, go very, very slow, and you only need to do a little bit of mixing. You'll see, it's just a very short amount of mixing. You just have it mix until the dough is barely coming together. It's still a little bit lumpy and chunky looking, but there's no flour left on the side of the bowl, no big chunks of flour, but this is not totally smooth. We don't want to get to the point that this is overworked to the point that it's really, really sticky. So here's my 25 grams of salt, and I'm going to just sprinkle it over the top. I'm not trying to incorporate it in right now. I want the salt to just sit on top of the dough while the dough rests together. And I'm gonna set the timer for 30 minutes, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna run our mixer for just another minute at the most to incorporate the salt. But for now, I'm going to put a clean towel over the entire thing, and it gets to rest. It's been 30 minutes, and now this is what they call the autolyse stage. So if you've seen that in a recipe, this is what we just did. The flour, water, and starter all rested together, and the salt was just sitting on the top. So I'm gonna bring you over here so that you can see. We're only going to turn our mixer on for just a little bit. We don't want to over knead the dough. This isn't like yeasted dough that you're trying to like incorporate all of those ingredients in together, because it has to activate really fast. Sourdough is this longer process, and we don't need to rush it by trying to like squish all of those ingredients together. So we just want to be careful if you're using your KitchenAid mixer or a stand mixer that you don't over mix it. If you are not using a stand mixer, this is when you would do your first stretch and fold. So you can see that the salt is still just sitting on top of the dough. I'm gonna put the bowl up, and I'm going to allow the dough hook to mix it in ever so slightly. And that right there is enough. We're not trying to get it where it's crazy mixed together. This is just the first of 3 more stretch and folds that we're gonna do. So now I'm going to put our towel back over so nothing drops in there, and set my timer for 30 back for stretch and fold number 2. And all I do, turn it on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done. Back to whatever you were doing. Stretch and fold number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done. Okay, the reason I count to 5 is because if you were doing it in a bowl where you were going like this around the bowl, you would go and you'd probably stretch it about 5 times. And that's why I just count to 5, because otherwise I have a tendency to turn this on, walk away, and then it's going for way too long. Whoops. And I want you to see what it's looking like in there. Look at how it's coming together more. There's not very much remains of flour and such on the side of the bowl. It's still just a little bit tacky. When we go to get it out, I'll show you the trick so that it doesn't stick to your hands. We're on to the very last stretch and fold. Gonna do it for 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. She's done. And now it's time for us to take the dough out of the mixer. And sometimes it's hard to get the dough hook off there. Here she is. Now we're gonna put the dough into our container. This is where the pizza dough is going to stay until we take it out to use it on Friday or Saturday. Okay, look at that. The dough hook comes out so easy. This is the cool thing. If you overwork your dough, it will be very sticky. You want it to be like this, where yes, it will stick to my hands a little bit, but for the most part, it's just doing its thing. We don't put anything else in the container, no oil, no flour. Remember, we don't want to use any extra flour. Once you do that initial autolyse where the mixture is resting with the salt on top, we don't want to add any more flour after that, because that flour has not had a chance to be worked through with the sourdough. So now this bin is going to go into our fridge, and it's going to wait until we're ready to make pizza on Friday or Saturday. And you betcha I will bring you with me when we're making pizza, and I'll show you exactly how we do it. It is, again, a very easy process, and the dough does most of the work. So we look forward to doing more sourdough fun with you. Leave a comment below if you have questions. We love your questions. It helps me to know when we head into the kitchen or into a project what you're trying to figure out, because we want to show you what we've figured out, because that's the beauty of doing life together. We get to share all the fun that we've learned.